There's a quote in your at the top of your journal page. If you have one of the spiritual journals, it's a quote by the great teacher Richard Rohr, and it says, "Your true self is who you objectively are from the beginning, in the mind and heart of God." Your true self. We spend so much of our lives wondering who we really are, don't we? We're thinking about that all the time. Who am I? Who am I? And Rohr reminds us that we are, and we always have been, a child in the mind and heart of God. And I believe that we are a conduit through which Spirit flows. What would happen if we surrendered to that identity? Last week, Reverend Dieter shared one of the most magical aspects of our teaching, and that is gratitude. And having a grateful heart really changes your entire relationship with life itself. It shifts your thinking and your choices and everything when you're coming from that grateful place. And I want to build today on one of the concepts that he shared, because it really takes us to this lesson that I have for you this morning. So Reverend Dieter was saying last week that life works when you understand that you are not the source of your good in your life, and you're not the destination of that good. I thought that was an amazing thing. So the universe, he saw the universe is source, and you are the pass-through, and the destination is back to the universe, right? So things flow through your life, and gratitude affirms in advance that whatever that source is going to continue to flow in your life, because it can't do anything else but that. And so gratitude is saying, I know that my good is coming through me. And that true self is anchored in that flow of love and life in your life. And Ernest Holmes says it a little bit differently. He says, we can awake to the living presence of God within each one of us and enter into a realization of peace and joy as we come to surrender all littleness, fear, and doubt. The river of life flowing from the mind of God will renew our vigor, remake our strength, ennoble our being, heal our bodies, and bring peace to our hearts. So when we're sitting in the middle of that flow in gratitude, wow, that's a beautiful place to live, a peaceful place to live. And hopefully many of us have many days where we feel that. We feel that we find ourselves in the middle of that flow. But how many of you have days where you don't feel that at all? Like, come on, like, okay, great. So today I want to talk about how do we get back to that? How do we get back to feeling like we're in the flow of everything good? Because instead of sitting in this mighty flow of love and light and resources and joy and solutions and opportunities and all of those things, it's easy to look around and say, I don't see any of that in my current situation. Am I right? Like, you can relate to that, right? So, stuff happens that causes us to stop the flow, to stop it. And sometimes we have do that stopping on purpose, like a clear decision on our part, but more often our flow stops totally without our conscious awareness of that moment. So let me unpack that just a little bit. So I think that we can look around the world that we live in and agree that there's no shortage of anything, right? There may be a shortage in my personal experience, but in the world at large, there doesn't seem to be a shortage. I'm going to give you an example. Right this minute, there is the same amount of water on the planet that there always has been. However, if you think about it, the amount of water in any one given place can change quite quickly. You can go from extreme drought to like a flood in just a few short days. If you don't believe me, just talk to someone who lives in California right now, right? So the water in your place may change, but the water in the universe is still all the same amount. Another example, there's just as much sunshine today as there was yesterday. It just might not be as visible on one day or another. Let me take one more example. There is just as much love as there has always been There's no shortage of the energy of love and appreciation. There was an unlimited supply yesterday, there's an unlimited supply today, and there's an unlimited supply for the rest of your life. However, your personal experience of a thing depends on a lot of factors. You can remove yourself from the flow of elements. You can go hide in the basement and not see any light at all. You know, you can move somewhere where there is no water, right? You can position yourself squarely in the middle of elements, basically by your choice, by your willingness to change positions, okay? So if we exist in a world of power and love and truth and joy and abundance and energy that is constantly flowing, why does it sometimes we feel like we're in a drought or in a pool of darkness? I think it's because somehow we changed our position in relationship to it. And that position changes through a belief in lack or a decision that there is something more powerful than source, okay? So let's talk about what I mean by unlimited flow. So this is an energetic universe that we live in. Can we agree on that? Everything is energy, right? There are high vibrations and there are low vibrations. High vibrations move quickly and are very attractive, and low vibrations move slowly and are repellent. So when we are in high vibration, we're attracting good to flow into our life and flow our way. And when we're in low vibration, we're either slowing down the flow or even repelling the flow from our personal field of possibility. So what is high vibration? High vibration is love, gratitude, joy, peacefulness, kindness. Anything that you wrote on your white stone words, probably high vibration, right? These increase flow in your life. What are low vibrations? Low vibrations are fear, anxiety, anger, distrust. These decrease flow. They're low vibrating. So what is more powerful in your life? High vibrating love or low vibrating fear? Okay? So when we are accepting that our life is based in love and light and truth, when we know that flow is there, and we know that abundance is our spiritual birthright, it is everyone's, when we believe that deeply that life is happening for us, we can allow ourselves to stand in the middle of the flow of good. And it comes into our life experience, and we give thanks for it, and then we send it back out on the river of flow, back out into the web of life, into the life we live. So let me give you some examples of this. Here's what love flowing looks like. Love flows in, and it looks like many different things, but we call it good. When love is flowing in, it's good. So good can come in like as kindness or support from other people. Love can flow into our lives in the form of like actual love and affection, but it flows in resources of any kind, money, opportunities, objects, gifts, things flow in, right? Love flows in as information and knowledge and ideas and thoughts. All of that's God's stuff flowing in. It flows in as talents and ideas. Love shows up as laughter and joy, but also peace and serenity, right? Can we agree that all those things are good? Those are all good things with a capital G, right? And when we know the truth of our spiritual identity, that we are God beings in this flow of life and love, and we know that all those things are ours, they're ours, constantly coming our way in an endless stream. When we know that, we also know in the spiritual awareness that there's no limit to those things, and that having my good does not prevent anybody else from having their good. That's an important thing, because we were taught, don't be so selfish, don't hog all the good, right? Because we were taught there's a limited amount. But what happens when we forget, or we never even knew that our life is based in love and light and truth? What happens then? What if our only identity we have is this magic suit, is this human stuff that we've got going on? That's the only level of knowingness we have of ourselves. When we were taught this is a competitive world and that everybody has to fight for their own and all of that stuff, if our training and upbringing was one of survival and trauma, how does that mindset impact the flow? If that's where we find ourselves on any given day, or if that's where we basically live, then we have this underlying fear and anxiety, and it's hard to shake it. And that fear and mental atmosphere can severely limit the flow because it stops the flow out. So we all know that if a river is going to flow, if we dam it up downstream, it's just, if we don't flow out, no more can flow in, right? So we have this fear-based identity. When we have that, what do? We cling to whatever good comes into our life. We think, okay, ooh, I got my morsel and I'm going to hold on to it, right? And good is coming, but we shrug it off. Like it might be like if someone offers to help us. Oh, this happens all the time. Someone offers to help us and we just like, oh, no, I'm got it. I'm fine. We may wave off a compliment. No, it's okay. I don't do compliments or whatever. If someone loves us, if we've got that fear-based mentality, we tend to be jealous and clingy and possessive, often pushing them away out of our need to control that love that's come into our lives. If we're in that mindset, when we receive money or gifts or objects, we hoard them, we keep them, we squirrel them away. What if we don't have what we need down the road? Let me keep everything. We may receive knowledge or information, but we decide to protect it so that the other team won't beat us to the answer or the solution. We may be given a talent, but we never invest enough time in it to develop it because we don't trust our ability to learn more and share our talent with the world. We think that flow of inspiration is going to stop. It's not that we don't receive our good, it's that our arms are full of everything that we're already holding on to that we can't allow more flow in the stream of life. And anxiety is rampant in our culture. Maybe you have some too. And think about this. Is your anxiety related to all this belief that you are alone or possibly removed somehow from the flow of good? My talk title is The Healing of Love because I believe that whatever you are afraid won't come into your life or won't stay in your life is contained in the river of flow that's constantly flowing. There is a great power when we surrender. I wanted him to sing that song, I surrender. I surrender to the spiritual truth that good is mine. It's my birthright. I can't ever get out of the flow of it. I can block myself from it, but it's still happening all around me. And I want to focus on one basic truth. When we surrender our human suffering to God, to our highest self, the love that is God itself begins its healing process, and we move from struggling to celebrating, because living in the flow is what all that is about. You know, Holmes wrote a lengthy essay, I will not read it to you, in the book called Living the Science of Mind, and it's called The Great Surrender. And he talks about what it means to surrender our lives to Spirit. To live the heavenly life, we've got to surrender the life that we live without Spirit at its center. We have to give it up. We have to give over. In other words, we have to surrender our attachment to the idea that we are lacking something. That when we deny the existence of the river of good, we have to give that idea up in order to know that we are smack in the middle of everything we are looking for. What would happen if we surrendered to Spirit entirely? You know, our theme this year is live out loud. I think that's what it takes to live out loud. We have to surrender. And in my estimate, there are a few basic things, actually 3 things that I want us to surrender. What can the love of God transform in my life if I surrendered things? The first thing I want you to surrender is the fear of love, okay? So most of us have a story. Most of us have a story that we're not loved as fully as we should be, or perhaps we were loved in the past and we don't think we're going to be loved again. We look at other people's relationships and things on social media or whatever, or activities that other people are having, and we feel like somehow we don't measure up. We develop this belief that we are somehow separate and missing out, and that we have no control over that. Sometimes we've had like great love or great friendships or connections at some point, but they seem to have left our lives and we don't know how to attract new connections. We look around, we don't seem to relate to the people around us. Let's surrender our fear of love and remember that the river of good flowing through our lives is happening, and open our eyes to see it. Love is everywhere present. It's everywhere present but we can't see it with our human eyes. There's no lack of the energy of love, but it's up to surrender to its presence. It's there. It's in that smile of the stranger that you feel kind of weird because why is he smiling at me, right? Or it's the offer of assistance that we often rebuff in this dignity of independence. It's the extended invitation that we're too busy to accept, in the awkward hug that we don't really know quite how to reciprocate or receive. It's in that little flirty baby that's seeing you from across the restaurant and kind of smiling at you. There's love there. You want to play peekaboo with them, right? When we surrender ourselves to the idea that love is everywhere present, we begin to look for it. And our perception of the lack of love and fear of love begins to be healed. And as you grow spiritually, you'll begin to notice that love is everywhere and it's available to you if you will allow it in. Give thanks in advance that love is available to you and you are open to receiving it and seeing it. And then start flowing it out. Give away what you most want to receive. Begin to show up as kindness, as the person supporting, as that smiling stranger. You can even be the flirty baby if you want to. Play peekaboo with somebody, I dare you. But every second, just warm yourself up to that love energy around you. I want to share a personal example that I think I've shared once before, but back in 2019, I had this experience of realizing that I had been hoarding love and symbols of love for years. Okay, so over my lifetime, I had collected a box of, not one box, many boxes of cards and letters that I had received from when I was a little girl. I had an open box in my closet, and no matter what I got, birthday cards, Christmas cards, whatever, I put them in the box. Now, I'm kind of lovable, so I would get them and I would put them in the box. And I had boxes and boxes. I've been moving. Y'all know I'm nomadic. I've moved a bajillion times, and I was moving them from house to house to house, and it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And one day in 2019, I made the decision to purge them. And as I opened every box, I cried. It was a day of tears, I can tell you that. I purged them. I kept only a few precious letters from my daughter and my grandmother. You know, it's a couple of relatives and things that are treasures, but I let go of all the rest. Do you know how big a recycling bin is, one of those big blue ones? It was full and overflowing with just my cards and letters of my life, right? And what I realized afterward is that I was keeping all of that out of fear that I would never have enough of it, or I wouldn't have any in the future or whatever. That everything good was behind me. The best relationships, the best friendships, the best times and all of that was behind me. And I wasn't trusting that the river of good, the river of love was going to keep flowing in my life. And I had boxes of proof that I was loved at some point, right? So whatever you cling to in your life is what you're afraid you won't be able to replace, that won't come in the river to you. So whatever you're holding on to, allow the thought to come in. Surrender to the idea that whatever good you crave is on that river. It's worth paying attention to what you're holding on to. So the second thing I want you to give up. First is the fear of love. The second one is anxiety. Okay, so are you ready to surrender your anxiety? So what I know is that the love of God can heal us from our attachment to outcomes and preferences. Okay, so this obstacle of anxiety, if you don't remove it, it's just going to block so many blessings. So we enter almost every situation with a preference of how it's going to turn out, right? And when that doesn't unfold, we think that there's something wrong, And we begin to prepare ourselves for catastrophe or disappointment, and anxiety begins to grow. What did I tell you about vibrations? Anxiety is a sinking vibration, and it's repelling. So others can feel our anxiety, and they start backing up. So when we surrender and accept and affirm that the highest and best is always going to unfold, it's always flowing towards us, then we can have this joy of anticipation of how is it going to turn out. We can stay curious as to how everything's going to unfold without kind of predetermining that things will not turn out well. We can kind of trust the process. So in Sacred, I'm going to give you an example. In Sacred Cup this morning, I was talking about a wedding that I officiated a couple weekends ago, and without disclosing too much personal information, they were like a normal bride and groom. They were terrified. They were so anxious. They were anxious about every little detail, as most people are when they're going into a big occasion like that. And so I said to them, I said, you've done all the planning that you could possibly do. And now I invite you to surrender and let the evening unfold. Let the love that you're holding this evening in show up, and just have a good time. Right? And it was a beautiful wedding. I haven't checked back in with them. They're busy right now. But I will tell you a more personal example. This past week, if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I was in New Orleans this week with my daughter. And we had planned everything, planned what we were doing. And then we just decided to say, well, let's just see what happens. We don't know. We kind of know where we want to eat, but we didn't have everything all planned out. So we weren't anxious about what was going to happen. And it turned out that we ended up, both of us, connecting with friends we weren't expecting to connect with out there. And it just turned out to be a really, really beautiful, but not planned out experience. We allowed it to unfold and become what it was going to become. We surrendered it. So think about any situation that you're nervous about right now, you're anxious about. What do you think will be lacking in it? And then check and see, isn't there enough of that everywhere in the world? And could it not flow into your experience? Just picture whatever it is being on the river of good that's flowing, and start noticing as it shows up, and allow it to relax you and begin to trust love, trust spirit. The third thing I'm going to ask you to give up as you surrender your life to the divine, and that is hate. So one of the greatest obstacles in our lives is hate. And surrendering this can unleash a great flow of good. Ernest Holmes says, God is love, and we cannot get close to the nature of love while we hate. Hate's a big word, and you might think, I don't have any hate, and you may not. But we cannot fully surrender to love as long as we are expressing or thinking hate in our lives. Hate's a marker of human separation. And as we come to know and understand that all is God, when we surrender our lives to God, we have to understand everything is God. We're all expressions of God. The invitation is for us to expand our understanding of people so that we can see that bigger idea, that there is a wholeness in everything and everyone. When we begin to move away from hatred and into love in all aspects of our lives, things begin to change. Because, see, there's nothing wrong with wanting a better experience for ourselves or more for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we want that at the expense of anyone that's different than us, that's a problem. That's where we are not in alignment with love. That's easier said than done. So think about it. Is there any group of people or any person that you are challenged to love and feel compassion towards? So I invite you, if there is, find some sort of advocacy group or that works on behalf of these people that you have a problem loving, because all hate is ignorance. It's all hate is ignorance of the shared humanity that we all have. Decide for yourself that you're willing to do the work to find the love of God in your connection with the ones you think you can't love. I've shared before, I came into ministry I had this career that touched all these very different populations. I worked with incarcerated felons. I worked with poverty-stricken individuals and families, just abject poverty. I worked with the hospitalized, mentally ill, and the marginalized creatives that kind of live on the edge of approved society. And each time I entered a new population, I did so in fear that our differences would be overwhelming. And each time, within a few days or weeks, my heart of love and compassion kind of took over. And I surrendered my fear to the higher calling of God's love. Excuse me, I have a dry cough. Can I have my... Sorry. Very seldom happens to me up here. So what would happen if we allowed... Sorry. What would happen? What would happen is I would sit down and not talk anymore. What would happen if we let love wash away our fear of love, our anxiety, and our hate? Love is energy, and love is what we run in our lives when we exchange our God self with someone else's God self, when we see the God in everyone else. And if you do these things that I've talked about today, you will watch the fear, anxiety, and hate go away in your life and just melt away into the nothingness from which it came, because love heals. And you know, there's a word in the song One Power, and it call it God, call it Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah is from the Baha'i faith. And I am going to close with a quote from Abdul Baha from the Baha'i faith. And he says, "Let us have love and more love, a love that melts all opposition, a love that conquers all foes, that sweeps away all barriers, that aboundeth in charity, tolerance, forgiveness, and noble striving, a love that triumphs over all obstacles." That's from Abdul Baha, the leader of the Baha'i faith. And I want you to close with our one-sentence affirmation one more time. I surrender to the love that flows through my life, and so it is.